are here as a part of the Legacy Project. Today we are excited to be joined by Dr. Johnnie Vinson. Start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your high school, where you went to college, some of your influential teachers, and tell us about your career, where you taught, and memorable people, performances, and experiences.
Well, I was born and raised in Andalusia, which is a small town down in South Alabama. For a small town, it had a very good band program. I started very late. I didn't start band until I was in the 9th grade. And the band director was a gentleman named Lacey Powell. Lacey had the distinction of being one of only 2 people, I think, who, were ever president of MEA 2 times. I don't remember what years, but Lacey was a real gentleman, a fantastic teacher, and he left Andalusia. I'll talk probably a little bit more about Lacey later, but he left Andalusia the summer before my senior year. And a gentleman named Jim Nettles took the band program there. And they were both really good band directors and good teachers, but they were just as different as night and day. And Jim came in, whereas with Lacey we've been playing published band music with a marching band all the time. And then when Jim Nettles came in, he started giving us music that he had written for the band. I started handing us out manuscript music. And I thought that was just the neatest thing I'd ever seen. And so I wanted to learn to do that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later too. It's funny how one thing like that, though, can just change the whole direction of your life, because Lacey left the summer before my senior year, and went to start Davidson High School in Mobile, when it was a brand new school. Had he not done that, and had Jim Nettles not come to Andalusia as the band director for my senior year, I would probably have gone to Troy, because Troy was probably the closest band program and the closest college and the closest college band director program to Andalusia. And I tell you, I started as a 9th grader playing snare drum, and by the 10th grade I had decided that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a band director. So Jim Nettles came in the summer before my senior year, and he was an Auburn graduate. He talked about Auburn and about Bodie Hinton, who was the band director at Auburn at that time. And he convinced me to go to Auburn. And again, had it not been for that, I would have gone a different place to college, different mentors. I never would have met my present wife and so forth. So my whole life course changed just because I changed band directors that summer before my senior year. I went to Auburn, went home after my freshman year and hated it. So I went back and went summers from then on, and I finished bachelor's and master's degrees at 4 calendar years by going summer. I don't think that could be done today, but of course I was really tired of school when I got out, but I finished both bachelor and master's degree. Took a job as the junior high band director at Richards Junior High in Columbus, Georgia. 7th and 8th grade middle school band. And the kids came from different directions, different elementary schools. Some started 5th grade, some 6th, some 7th. And it was a real scuffle to try to have a pretty good band. And back then, people didn't know any better. We had to do junior high marching band and everything. They ran it just like a little high school. You had a football team and an annual and a basketball team and a marching band and all that. And I soon decided that, number one, I was not cut out to teach that age kids. It takes a special person, I think, to teach middle school kids. You have to love that age kids. Some of them are still little, some of them are really big. They're in transition, maturity transition, and they're extremely hyper, and I just decided that was not what I really wanted to do. And at the end of that second year, Bodie Hinton, whom again I'll probably talk about when I talk about teachers, called me and said, I got you an assistantship with Bill Moody at the University of Texas. Dr. William J. Moody had been the band director at the University of Southern Mississippi. Fine band. And had gone to the University of Texas as a as director of bands. So out I go the summer after I taught 2 years to the University of Texas, wanting to work on a degree in conducting. And of course, with 2 years in junior high, I was too naive to realize I didn't have the experience to work on a degree in conducting. So I got into PhD degree in music education. Research oriented, not my thing, but I probably would have stayed and finished it. But I was lucky enough. Wound up with Dr. Moody had somebody else kind of be his graduate assistant that fall, but I wound up to be graduate assistant to a guy named Vinson with the University of Texas Longhorn Band. And that gave me my first opportunity to start writing arrangements for a really big, good college band. So it was just luck, you know. That's not what I intended to do when I went out there, but that graduate assistantship with the Longhorn Band was really, really valuable because I got to write for them. The spring of that year, I'd been in that doctoral program 1 year. Dr. Hinton again from Auburn called me. He said, I'm going to become the head of the music department. Bill Waltz, who was his assistant, was going to take over the band program. Would I be interested in coming back and being the assistant band director and arranger for the marching band and percussion teacher? I said, I'll be there. And so there off I went 1 year into the doctoral program. Got to Auburn, back to Auburn, started writing for the marching band, loved it. Met a young lady whom I married. Her name was Nancy McGraw. This coming spring will be 50 years we've been married. Worked for about 4 years, and then I had a decision to make. I was not going to be able to get tenure because I didn't have that doctoral degree finished. It's kind of academic blackmail. You will finish your degree or you won't get tenure. I'd been gone 4 years, and all the people at the University of Texas that I wanted to study with were gone. Bill Moody, who I went out there to study conducting with, had taken a job as chair of the music department at the University of South Carolina. Warren George, my music ed guy, had gone to Penn State. Dick Goodwin, my theory guy, had gone to the University of South Carolina. There's nobody left out there that I wanted to go back and study with. So there was a guy named Luther Snavely, whom I was in school with there. He was a former, very successful Texas high school band director. He had finished his doctorate and had taken the job as director of bands at the University of Mississippi. And so Luther said, why don't you come on over here to Ole Miss and finish your doctorate? You can be my graduate assistant. I said, great, let's just do that. So Nancy and I have been married 3 or 4 years. So we went to the University of Mississippi. And again, I just got really lucky. Nancy was going to work while I went to graduate school, and they needed another flute player, piccolo player, so she got a full scholarship to be in the marching band, the concert band, be the flute section leader at Ole Miss. And I had a fellowship, which was like an assistantship where you don't have to do any work, although I did. I hung around the band hall a lot. And in the second year, I did have the assistantship with the marching band. But I tell you, I really wasn't interested in working on a doctorate in music education that much. Research is one of my things. It just wasn't what I was interested in. I like to write music for band, arrange. And they had an emphasis in the doctorate program at Ole Miss in music theory. And that was what I wanted to do. And it turned out that my teacher there, the head of theory, was a guy named Andrew Fox. And Andrew reminded me of another guy that I had in undergraduate school. I just got so lucky with these theory teachers. Let me back up to undergraduate school at Auburn. My theory teacher there was a guy named Bob Richardson. Bob was a jazz piano player. Nobody called him Mr. Richardson. It was Bob, or his nickname was Fob. Jazz piano player. And he was the sort of person who could teach you, and you didn't even realize you were being taught. We didn't have a textbook. It was from music theory class. Our textbook, such as it was the Raymond Schneider edition of the Bach 371 harmonized chorales. And whatever Bob wanted to talk about at any one point, he'd go in there and find it in that book, and that's the way we would study it and talk about it. very practical way of studying theory. Everything just made perfect sense. So later on, when I went to work on my doctorate or finish my doctorate at Ole Miss, the theory guy was Andrew Fox, and he was the same way. We didn't have a book. Actually, he wrote a book while I was there because I did the musical examples for him. But everything was just so practical and down to earth and made such perfect sense. And for example, he said that all the different eras in music history, what's called the common practice period, 1600 to 1900, encompasses the Baroque, classical, romantic periods in music history. He said, what is there during that period that you can see on the page or that you can hear when you listen to it that allows you to put the label Baroque on it? And so we did that kind of in-depth looking and studying the music, and we came out with diagrams and lists of characteristics of the various style periods. Things that just made so much sense, but yet we weren't digging through a textbook. This was, go out and find the music, find Debussy. We're going to talk about the 20th century. But anyway, I was just so fortunate to have two theory teachers that were just really, really good. And when it came time to write my doctoral paper, instead of having to do some research project that didn't interest me at all, I wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a textbook on marching band arranging, because that's what I've been doing so much of. And so they let me do it. I wrote this textbook on marching band arranging, and that was my doctoral paper. And interestingly, some of the information in there is still just as good today as it was back then. Percussion has changed a lot. Percussion back then was archaic, but it's changed a lot. There's a lot of still good information. So anyway, finished the degree, stayed 2 years and left with degree in hand. This ABD stuff. Went back to Auburn, and I was still the assistant director, arranger, and percussion teacher. And I sort of deliberately haven't been putting dates on all this. Maybe I should have. I graduated from college with my bachelor's and master's degree in the spring of 1966. Taught in Columbus 67, 68. Went to the University of Texas in fall of 68. Then went to work at Auburn in the fall of 69, 1 year later. Nancy and I got married in 1970. Went back to Ole Miss to finish her master's and my doctorate degree, 74 to 76. And so at 76, fall of 76, I went back to Auburn. I was the same job, assistant director and arranger for the marching band. Did that until 1990. What would that have been? 14 years, I guess, to 1990. That's not right. Did that to 1985. 9 years, I guess. 1985, we finally went to the director, associate director situation at Auburn, where the associate director did the marching band. And so I took over the marching band at Auburn in the fall of 1985. And I did that from 85 through 90. And in 1990, my predecessor, Bill Walls, retired, and I became director of bands at Auburn in 1990. And kept that position until I retired in the spring of 2007, which was 13 years ago, which is very hard to believe, but it was. But I've talked about writing, and that all those years I was doing the Auburn band, that was my day job, and I had a night job. I was writing band music. I started with a publisher in the early 70s called Vinson Publications in Miami. Wrote a few pieces for Warner Brothers Publications, which doesn't even exist anymore. Big Three Publications, which doesn't exist anymore. And then somewhere in the kind of late 70s, somewhere between 76, 77, 78, I got started with the Hal Leonard Company. And I would do my day job with the band, and I would go home and write at night. And I've done that for all those years until I retired. And then that sort of became almost a full-time job. Hal Leonard's a great company. It's the biggest music publisher in the world. I've published over 500 pieces. Now that's spread over a lot of years, that's from the 70s to now. I still write about 12 pieces a year. And it's fun. I mean, that's what I got so tired the last few years I worked of doing a band in the daytime, you go home, you eat dinner, you go down and you write until you can't keep your eyes open anymore. You get up the next morning and do it all over again. I promised myself when I retired from the university, I would never, ever, ever again work at night, and I don't. Around 5:30, turn off the computer, go upstairs, and have my evening then. But Hal Leonard has the rights to so much music. I've gotten to work for the music of all these famous writers. I just finished a big medley from the movie Toy Story 4 that came out around Christmas. I'm right now in the middle of a big medley from the new Star Wars movie. And so getting to work with that music is a real blast. And I actually get to see those full orchestral scores that John Williams takes into the studios in Hollywood. I mean, I actually get those to work from. And so it's a great job. I try to remind myself once in a while I'm supposed to be retired. But most days, yesterday, I worked from morning until about 5:30. And if I weren't over here today at AMEA, I'd be doing it today. I'm dressed differently because this part of the interview, our discussion, was recorded a day later than the part. But I wanted to come back today and mention a couple of other things. A couple other people who have really meant a lot to me that I did not get to yesterday. I mentioned that my second high school band director was a gentleman named Jim Nettles, who'd gone to college at Auburn. Well, his college roommate at Auburn was a gentleman named Tommy Goff, Goff. And right out of college, Tommy took the band job at Auburn High School. And it was in 1956. And except for, I think, a couple of years maybe that he was in the Army, he stayed in that job until he retired in 1988. It's the only job he ever had. I was fortunate enough to be able to intern, student teach as we call it in those days, with Tommy at Auburn High School in the fall of 1965. And Tommy had a fine band program. In fact, Tommy had the best high school concert band I think I ever heard in Alabama. And Tommy's rapport with those kids was just absolutely amazing. My wife played in his high school band, actually. And he had many professional musicians come out of that band, teachers and professional players. And not only did he have a fine concert band, he had an outstanding jazz band. And again, he had several students coming out of that jazz band that are professional jazz players today. Tommy was not really in the marching band. It wasn't really his thing, and he found it very stressful, and that's the reason he finally retired kind of early in 1988. But the fall I interned with him, I told him, I said, Mr. Goff, I would like to write a halftime show. Now, back in those days, bands didn't do the same halftime all year like they do now. And there weren't any marching contests that people went to. So bands generally did a different show every week. The marching was not real fancy. It was mostly what you call formations. They would make a picture here and stand and play something, and go make another picture of something and play something. But he said, you want to write a halftime show? I never practiced talk before. I didn't know that student teachers didn't do that. But he let me. And I wrote the drill, I wrote the music, copied the parts and everything. It was a patriotic show, and it turned out okay. And that was just another step in learning how to arrange, was the opportunity he gave me with that high school band. Well, later on, after I was working at Auburn, I would go over and visit with him, and as he was getting ready for festival or contest, he'd say, come over and listen. Of the 30, however many years, he took his band to district and state contests, as we call it back then. They never made other than a unanimous superior rating but one time. And that one time, they were playing a very rhythmic piece, and they had to stop in the middle of it and restart because it kind of came apart rhythmically. And boy, that really bothered him. But other than that one time, they never made other than superior ratings, and it was a fine high school band. And so Tommy Goff is a person that should be remembered. He died in 2008, but he was a good one.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anyone in Alabama, much less the country, that hasn't played a Johnnie Vinson piece. And what is your sort of guiding philosophy or principles or values that you think are important that you try to bring to the table every time you write a piece for bands and young bands in particular?
Well, most of what I write is for young band. And Hal Leonard has very strict guidelines. We have a 2 or 3 page guideline for every grade level of music. For instance, at grade 3, which is the level I'm working at on this Star Wars music, we have set levels for ranges for every instrument, kind of guidelines about how rhythmically complex it can be that affects the difficulty of the piece. And you work with those guidelines. The younger the band, the lower the grade level, the harder it is. I've said many times that it's really hard to write easy music, especially easy music that has some substance to it. Anybody can crank out stuff, but I really try in the young band music that I write to write music that has some kind of substance to it. I don't like formulas. For instance, in band music, and I do write some original pieces. It's not all arranging. I will accept a commission. I usually maybe will do 1 or 2 a year. I have one now lined up for a private high school, Catholic high school in Virginia. But for instance, what I call the ABA overture has been so badly overused. It's got a fast section here, a slow section in the middle, and the same fast section at the end that it had at the beginning. Sometimes even with a DC, just go back and play the first section again. I swore I would never write a piece in that format. I think I've done one. And even, rhythms get to be overused, like the syncopation, I said, I'll never write that in a piece. I think I have a couple of times where the music really called for it. But I try to avoid formulas. I just try the best I can at whatever grade level I'm working for to write music with some substance in it. I was just talking to some ladies just now about, they asked if I'd written anything for a really young band, like beginners, into the first year. And the answer is not very much. I normally write at grade 2, 2.5, 3. Occasionally I write a grade 4 piece. But I wrote a piece for a 6th grade band up in Pennsylvania. And they sent me this story, and they said every kid in our school has to read this story as part of the reading program. We want you to write a band piece based on this story. And so I took a couple little episodes out of the story, and I wrote a band piece. And again, writing grade 1, for kids at the end of their first year playing, it is really hard to write that easy music with some kind of substance to it. But it was a challenge. Don't do that very much.
Are there any experiences from your career that you think helped define you or make you a better teacher? Or are there things that you wish that teachers that are starting out in the profession now that they should know?
The things that affected me most, I think, are the opportunities that I've had, and I've been very fortunate. So many people write band music and are never able to get a piece published. And it's hard. It's hard to get in. But several things have gone on that really concern me. For instance, these days anybody with a computer and a printer can be a music publisher. Well, what happens is that eliminates a filter. And that filter is an editor. You know, when I write something, not only does it have to go through the director of band publications at Howletter, but then it also goes through the editorial team. The person who just writes music doesn't have that filter. I sent in the sketch to this music from Star Wars that I'm working on. I sent it in yesterday for him to look at the sketch. And he sent it back with about, I don't know, a list of 5 or 6 things that were mostly good suggestions. There was one that we kind of negotiated, but you know, he had some really good suggestions. And I think that sort of thing helps. I think it helps you to put better music out there. The thing that really concerns me now is the music ed curriculum. I'm not that familiar with all the colleges, but I did look a year or 2 ago at Auburn's music ed curriculum. And I don't think that the methods courses get nearly the emphasis that they should. When a kid goes out to teach band, they need to be able to produce, if you're going to teach kids, you need to be able to form a correct embouchure, produce a characteristic sound on the instrument, know the basic fingerings of all the instruments, and know something about the intonation deficiencies of those instruments. What are the good notes, what are the bad notes? Kids coming out, they don't know those things. And how can you possibly teach if you don't know those things? Back in the good old days, when I was in school, we were on the quarter system then at Auburn, and we took 3/4 of brass instruments, 3/4 of woodwind instruments, and 1/4 of percussion. Percussion was not as complicated back then as it is now. And so you had a chance to actually play, you know, the 3 of the instruments, or sometimes maybe more than 1 1/4, and really kind of get a grip on that stuff. I took flute, for instance, and flute was easy to me. I really liked it, and I wound up buying one because I enjoyed playing it. Clarinet was just really difficult for me. I mean, it was so difficult that I made a C in the class. And so I signed up and took 1/4 of applied lessons. I knew I had to learn to teach clarinet. I knew I had to learn the embouchure and the fingers and how to teach clarinet. I don't think kids are getting that now. I look at Auburn and I think they're getting 1 semester of woodwinds and 1 semester of brass and maybe 1 of percussion. And how can you possibly learn all those things I mentioned on the brass instruments in 1 semester? And in woodwinds in 1 semester, it can't be done. It's not possible. And I think kids are getting cheated. I think they're having to take all kind of music and culture courses and all these, which are, I don't really question their importance. I guess they're important. But I think in order to make room for those sort of things, they've chipped away at the methods courses until now the kids are not prepared when they go out to teach. Now that's just my opinion. People can disagree with that. But if I was telling a young person that's going to be a band director what they really needed to know for every instrument, with the possible exception of the double reeds, which are harder, and as a result, probably 75-80% of the high school bands in Alabama don't have an oboe, so you got to get to the big cities where you got somebody that can teach them. But the basic instruments, though, the flute, the clarinet, the saxophone, the trumpet, the horn, the trombone, the tuba, you've got to know those things. You've got to be able to form an embouchure, produce a tone, know the basic fingerings, and know the intonation deficiencies of those instruments, and I don't think the kids are getting it. In my opinion. I was offering some advice earlier to students that are going out to teach. And one of the pieces of advice that I would like to add to that is to be active in the profession. There are many organizations for band teachers. I won't even try to list them all. The big umbrella organization is the National Band Association. It's open to anybody that teaches band anywhere. Probably thousands of members, I'm not sure. And then there are more specific ones. There's a Women Band Directors Organization, a Catholic School Band Directors Organization, and others and others. And then there's an organization called Phi Beta Mu, which sort of is the more established band directors in each state. In fact, our chapter is having a luncheon here at noon today. But there's another organization that was formed in the 1930s. It's kind of the granddaddy of them all. The founder was Edward Franco Goldman, who was a famous band director at that time, wrote marches, and a number of other well-known band directors at that time. The first life president was John Philip Sousa. It was founded in the 1930s. The organization is the American Bandmasters Association, or ABA. And I became a member of that organization purely because of one person, and that person is Johnnie Long. Anybody that's taught band in Alabama probably knows something about Johnnie Long. Johnnie was a very successful band director at Robert E. Lee High School here in Montgomery. And then somewhere in the 1960s, mid-60s, he went to Troy State Teachers College, which later became Troy State University and is now Troy University. At the time Johnnie went there in the mid-1960s, it was a very small band program, not a very good band program. And Johnnie was like a missionary. He attracted kids to that program. He made something of it. He made it into a huge program. 200-300 kids in the band at a school of 5,000 or 6,000 is really pretty amazing what he was able to do. Johnnie had a huge influence on so many people. He's got many, many people out teaching band today who are former students of Johnnie Long. I didn't really know Johnnie until one year after I became director of bands at Auburn. We hosted the All-State Band Festival at Auburn, and our band played a concert for them on Friday night of that. And Johnnie heard the band and liked what he heard, and he called me up and he said he wanted to sponsor me for membership in the American Bandmasters Association. That's not an organization you just go join. That organization, someone who is in there has to sponsor you, and you're voted on, you're elected to membership. And in the entire country, there are only around 300 members, something like that. So it's a sort of an exclusive but a very prestigious organization. And so Johnnie sponsored me, and I was elected to membership in 1994. I've been in 25 years now. And that never would have happened without him. And John has been a friend ever since, a good friend. He's about 93 or 94 years old now and not in very good health. And I think about him a lot. But he has done so many things for so many people, including me. And I wanted to be sure I had an opportunity to mention him. As part of his success, he was awarded an honorary doctoral degree from his alma mater, which was Jacksonville State University. And but he has just had a profound influence on so much of the band community here in Alabama. I want Johnnie Long to be remembered.
Dr. Johnnie Vinson, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today. And
you're welcome.
Thank you for your contributions to the profession and everything you've done for the state.
Well, I'm one of the really fortunate people. I've always gotten to do what I really love to do. Some people don't like their job. I never felt like that. I always enjoyed my job. And I was fortunate to have those good theory teachers I talked about. Dr. Bodie Hinton, who was my mentor at Auburn, was a wonderful person. Just never meet a nicer person. He passed away a few years ago. And then the writing thing, that all just kind of came in there together, and it all just kind of fit together. But I was just, so fortunate to get to do it, and I still am. When I get home, I'm back into Star Wars.